Good evening, namaste. Welcome to our Living Wisely, Living Well webinar for this evening. My name is Nayaswami Devarshi, and let's begin with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswarji, beloved Guru, Paramhansa Yoganandaji, saints of all religions, we humbly bow at thy feet. Divine Mother, we are your children. Help us to feel thee flowing through us in meditation, in activity, in our thoughts, and in our words. May we express thy kindness, thy bliss, thy love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. And let's meditate for just a couple of minutes. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Again, welcome to our webinar. The topic this evening is clarity, from Living Wisely, Living Well. And of course, Swami Kriyanandaji, as he often does, he expands from one seed, thought, or word. And we'll get into this expanded version of what Swamiji gives us with these readings this evening. For January 27th, Swamiji writes, "For clarity, edit, at least mentally, what you say or write, always placing emphasis on simplicity, directness, and rhythm. Convoluted sentences merely bewilder the mind. Clarity requires special attention. Try to think with others. Take into account also their varied levels of understanding." So I'm going to talk this evening especially about two things: communication and the power of words and the power of the voice, which they're related, but they also veer off from each other a little bit. What Swamiji says about communication and clarity here is very, very important, and it comes from somebody who I think was maybe the greatest communicator that I have ever met in my life. I think people often don't appreciate the way that Swami Kriyanandaji could explain and express very profound thoughts in very simple ways and very clear ways. And I think sometimes people misunderstood who he was because they thought it was too simple. They expected profundity to be all these vague philosophical and practical, floaty thoughts and ideas. And he brought philosophy even into very practical, very clear, very simple expression. Now, a great deal of that came from having such a deep understanding of what it was he was talking about. And so he was able to express it very simply and very clearly. Swamiji often quoted a famous author who was writing a letter to a friend. And it was a very long letter. And this author concluded by saying something that was very interesting. She said, "If I had had more time, this letter would have been shorter." Isn't that interesting? And it was very true, because if the author had had more time to think about what she was saying, she would have been able to say it more clearly and simply with fewer words, more economically in a way. And you'll find that people who use a lot of words uneconomically very typically are not very clear in the way they express themselves. So when you speak, when you write, try to use words economically, clearly, simply. And you'll find that if you learn to communicate and learn to see everything as communication, as a two-way exchange, not just you talking to another person, but communication in the sense almost of communion, which I imagine has a shared root, where you are, as Swamiji says here, try to think with others when you speak with them. When you do speak in that way and communicate in that way, what you're doing is, in a way, you're listening even as you're speaking. It's almost like your minds are merging with your audience or the person, the individual you're speaking with. Because you can't just say what you want to say without trying to tune in to where the other person is at. Not only their level of intelligence, but the way that they receive, the way that they perceive. Some people maybe are more feeling oriented, and you may have to communicate an idea in a more feeling kind of a way. Some people are more intellectually oriented. And so you do need to try to tune into the people, the individual that you're speaking with. I'll use an example, a bad example of someone that I worked with at one time, who at times had to give presentations to the whole group of the place that I was working. And he had a very bad habit of always using acronyms. An acronym is using the initials of a commonly used phrase or company or idea. And he was constantly throwing out acronyms. And you could tell that half the audience, when he used those acronyms, had no idea what he was talking about. And I don't know where he was coming from, why he was doing this, but it was not a very effective way of communication. It was obvious that he was not tuning in to the people who he was sharing with. He was using these acronyms sort of as a shortcut, as an easier way for him to say something. But if he had tuned into the audience and seen the look of bewilderment and puzzlement sometimes on their faces, he would have understood that it was a very ineffective form of communication. And so all communication, speaking, using words, writing, you really do need to tune into the audience. Swamiji said that when he would write, he would actually think of a person that he was writing to, even when he was writing a book, rather than just a vague general audience. He would try to think of an individual. And it was a very helpful way for him to, again, understand that he was communicating an idea to another person, and that he had to express it in a way that that person would receive it. Now, Swamiji, when he was writing, was very interesting because he was an extraordinary writer. He studied writing in college, but even before that, he had an amazing gift for writing and communication, for language. He knew something like 6 or 7 languages very well, so he had a mind and a capacity for the language and the words and communication. But when he would write a book, sometimes he would edit a single paragraph. He said 20, 30, 40, even 50 times. And he said something very interesting that relates to what he's expressing here with this reading today. He says, what you say or write, place emphasis on simplicity, directness, and rhythm. And again, part of the editing process that he went through, I think, was being more economical and clear with words, expressing an idea in the clearest, direct, most simple way that a person could receive it. So that's something we've been talking about, but he says something else in here that's very interesting, which is rhythm. Now, we don't often think of rhythm when we are writing, but Swamiji would say that towards the end of the editing process, he would finally edit for the rhythm and flow of the words, so that the flow of the words were pleasant to read and sounding in the brain or the mind of the person who was reading it. I think many of you have probably experienced something that I have, which is that sometimes I'll read fiction, short stories or novels, and you'll find that every once in a while you come across an author who just the reading of their words is almost effortless and enjoyable and easy. And you don't really know why. It's just something that's almost unexplainable. But if you look closely, you'll see that the way they use words, the rhythm, the length of the sentences, the way the length of the sentences vary, the paragraphs, the way even the consonants and vowels flow together, that they have a sense of the rhythm of the words, and that it just creates an enjoyable pattern in the brain and the mind and makes you be able to receive it more easily. And you'll find that reading one author, you can read a chapter, you can read many pages, and you feel almost refreshed and clear and uplifted. And sometimes you'll read an author, and after a paragraph or a few pages, your brain just starts wearing down, and it's just you feel a little bit tired because you have to make a lot of effort to try to understand and tune into what they're saying and what they're trying to communicate. So do understand that there are a lot of different elements that go into communication, whether it's using words or whether it's using writing. Now, Swamiji also says, try to think with others. Now, one way to do this is partly when you are speaking, especially those of you who might do public speaking or to small groups of people, look at the people that you're speaking to. And one, don't feel like you're speaking to them. As Swamiji says, try to think with others. Try to feel like you're sharing with them, just as a friend, in a very heartfelt way. I have a friend who says that when she is talking to someone, sometimes she likes to visualize. She's a very colorful person and wears very colorful clothes and colorful imagery. But she says she likes to feel like there's a rainbow coming out the top of her head and connecting to the top of the other person's head, as a way of helping her to feel that they are really connecting on a soul level and on a colorful, joyful, uplifting level, rather than just through words, and that they are not separate souls, but that they are communing together in a way. So this is how we can share, talk, be with others, rather than just talking to them. Now, this is a little bit tricky because how do we learn to listen even as we are speaking? And it's a very interesting concept, but it is something that you can do. Sometimes, I think I've noticed that sometimes people will talk and they just start going and going and going, and you can tell that they're just, they have enough momentum that they're not going to stop. And it helps to just mentally stop your rhythm sometimes, to pause and just try to tune into what the other person, where they are at. Try to understand what they are receiving, whether they're getting what you're saying. Try to listen to if they have any questions in their minds. Very often when people would attend a lecture or a talk by Swami Kriyanandaji, an amazing number of times afterwards they would say that he answered the exact questions that they had in their mind. And I think it's because he was listening as he was speaking. He was listening, he was looking at their faces, he was looking at their expressions. One time I heard him, twice I think I heard him speaking, and in the middle of talking, he said a sentence and he looked out at the audience, and I could swear that the audience had no change of expression, but he could tune into their minds and he understood that they didn't understand really clearly what he just said. And he stopped and he paused and he rephrased it and he resaid it. And so this is a way, again, communication is communing with others, listening to where they are at, trying to understand whether they are receiving or understanding what you're saying, and trying to say it in a very clear, as Swamiji says again, simplicity, directness, and rhythm. Finally, he says, take into account also their varied levels of understanding. And so again, in a larger audience, this is a little bit tricky because you're going to have people that have different levels of understanding, and you have to kind of sometimes talk towards the middle of the range of understanding or towards the bottom. You don't want to sort of water everything down that you're saying, just so everyone understands it perfectly. But again, tune into the audience, tune into the person that you're speaking with. Feel how they're responding to what you're saying. If you're working with a child, for example, try to tune into whether they are reacting emotionally against what you're saying. And if that's happening, try to find a way to soften it, to say it in a way that maybe uses humor and tries to break down that resistance. I think this is one reason why Swamiji, and I think Yoganandaji, said that when you give a public talk, towards the beginning it helps to use some humor to get people to laugh, because people relax. And when people are relaxed, they're more open to receiving. There's no barrier of resistance. All of a sudden they're your friend, and they feel comfortable in your presence, and they're more easily able to receive what you have to give. Now I'm going to also read a couple of the other readings in the next few days, because Swamiji kind of expands on this point, and it's helpful to develop the idea that he's sharing here. For January 28th, tomorrow, he says, "Say only what you mean. In your most casual speech, be sincere, and you'll find others listening to you instead of gazing off in furtive search of a clock." And you'll find that if you're sincere, you don't try to fool people, that people will be more receptive and more listening. Those who are honest, those who tell the truth, people tend to listen to them more. There's an expression from the old Soviet Union that my wife told me one time, where the communists were always basically telling lies to people and fluffing up the truth. And the way that this was expressed is that they were hanging noodles on your ears, was the expression, which is like hanging spaghetti on your ears, which is a way of saying that they were just playing with your receptivity. And so when people talk that way, then everyone stops listening and stops believing, and they start looking at the clock and ignoring what they have to say. Now for January 30th, Swamiji gets into another area of communication. He says, in communicating with others, don't speak only from your intellect. Speak from your heart. Many problems would be resolved if people would learn the right balance between heart and head. The need to balance these two is the psychological reason for the attraction between the sexes. Yoganandaji talked in this way very often also, that people are trying to find a balance between reason and feeling. And when you have that balance, there's a wholeness, there's an integration in the individual. And you'll find that when those are out of balance, when one is too emotional and restless in an emotional way without reason, or when one is just dry intellect without any devotion or heart feeling, there's an imbalance. And you'll find that bringing those two together not only balances the individual within themselves, but you also find that it makes somebody a much more effective speaker. Yoganandaji once said that the most effective speakers and the most effective speeches use the right balance of intellect and feeling. And he gave an example of one that probably is not very well known in India, and I don't know it either because I never read much of Shakespeare growing up, but it's the speech of, I think it's Mark Antony in one of Shakespeare's books, where he uses intellect and he uses a lot of emotion and feeling, and that balance produces a very effective speaker and a conveying of ideas. And it doesn't mean speaking emotionally and with tears and all these things, but you will find that when you do speak, when you try to convey an idea, if you have a feeling for that idea, and I'll use an obvious example, if you're talking about divine joy or bliss, if you just try to convey it purely in an intellectual way, you won't really convey what it is. But if you convey it with reason, but also with a sense of joy and humor and lightness and bliss, you'll find that it conveys the idea very effectively, because when people are receiving, they're not just receiving words or ideas, they are also receiving the feelings of the person speaking. And so work on finding this right balance between reason and feeling whenever you speak. This is why it's very helpful when you do give a talk to the public. It's very helpful to meditate before you speak and try to tune into the feeling of the ideas that you're trying to convey. And so work with both of these qualities, reason and feeling, whenever you speak, whenever you share ideas, whenever you write. Now, I'll talk about a few things here. One is that Yoganandaji, he talked very often, or often enough, about how to use the voice, the power of the voice, the power of words, and the importance of it. He said that people who talk a lot and are constantly talking, that their words have less power. They've lost some power. People who speak only when there's something meaningful to say, that their words have more power. It doesn't mean to be in silence all the time until you have some very profound statement to make. Now I'm going to read some things from Yoganandaji. This is from his book, Scientific Healing Affirmations. This is from an earlier edition, 1926. And he starts out this book in a very interesting way. Again, if you listen to his words, the way he wrote them, they are clear, they are simple, they have feeling, they have power. They also have a certain rhythm to them. In the very first sentence of this book, he says, "Man's word is spirit in man." And he goes on, "Words are sounds occasioned by the vibrations of thought. Thoughts are vibrations sent forth by the ego or soul. Every word that leaves your mouth ought to be potent with your genuine soul vibration." And it's interesting the way he puts it. Thoughts are vibrations sent forth by the ego or by the soul. One or the other. And I imagine that sometimes it's a little bit of both. But what he's saying is that, in the next sentence, is that when words that leave our mouth are potent with genuine sincerity and soul vibration, then those words have power. They have power to change people. Again, Swami Kriyanandaji, part of the reason why he was such an extraordinary speaker is his words had the power, they had soul vibration, and they had the power to change people's consciousness and to change people's lives, and Yoganandaji and other great saints. Words in most people are lifeless because they are automatically put forth into the ether without being impregnated with soul force. Too much talking, exaggeration, or falsehood used in connection with words is just like shooting bullets out of a toy gun without the gunpowder. That is why the prayers or the words of such people do not produce any desired, definite change in the order of things. Every word you utter, you must mean it. In other words, every word you put forth must represent not only truth, but some of your realized soul force. Words without soul force are like husks without the corn. Then he talks about, again, using feeling, divine feeling, not just emotional feeling, but deep, calm feeling, to imbue our words with power and with the power to really be effective. He says, words that are saturated with sincerity, conviction, faith, and intuition are just like highly explosive vibration bombs, which, when let out, are sure to explode the rocks of difficulties and create the change desired. And here he's talking about affirmations. Avoid speaking unpleasant words, even though they are true. Words must be intoned according to the convictions within. Sincere words or affirmations, repeated understandingly, feelingly, and willingly, are sure to move the omnipresent cosmic vibratory force and render you aid in your difficulty. So this has to do more and more with the power of affirmation. But I have seen that one way to really effectively help you to give your voice, your words more power, is to use your voice very consciously at times. And I think many times we use our voice unconsciously, and that's natural. We can't, if we're just having a lighthearted conversation with a child or with our friend or husband or wife, we can't be trying to impregnate every single word with soul power. We have to at times be relaxed and casual. But sometimes it can be very helpful to be really, really conscious about how we use words. And there's 3 ways that I have seen that are very effective in helping us do this. One is singing divine music. Swami Kriyanandaji wrote beautiful songs. He wrote, I don't know, hundreds of songs, 400 or 300 or something songs in his life. And many of us at Ananda Sangha over the years have sung those songs. And I have found that as I'm singing those songs over the weeks and the months and the years, my voice changes and my consciousness changes by singing those songs that have soul power and tuning into the feeling and the consciousness that is in those songs. So singing beautiful songs is one way to change your voice and to help you to tune into this understanding that words have power and that the words can be imbued with spiritual power and other divine feelings. The other way to do this, to use your voice in a very conscious, deep way, is devotional chanting, singing songs to God. And when you sing devotional chants, again, it's like the vibration of deep divine feeling, devotion, divine love, other divine qualities flows through your body, flows through your mind, flows through your voice. And it helps you to understand that the voice of anybody can be changed and can be empowered by using it more consciously. So singing songs, devotional chanting, and the other one is, as Yoganandaji recommends in this book, using healing affirmations. And the way to use healing affirmations is to do all these things that Yoganandaji just recommended in this reading, and you'll find that saying words consciously in this way helps you to understand that words can have a lot of power. I'm going to read what he says about different stages of chanting, chanting words with affirmations. Remember again that the affirmations must be practiced with proper loud intonation, fading into a whisper, and above all with attention and devotion, taking the thought from the auditory sense to the understanding or conscious mind, thence to the subconscious or automatic mind, and then to the superconscious with conviction about their efficacy and truth. To those who believe, these affirmations will cure them, and Yogoda will teach them how to prevent disease forever as well as cure it. And so I think we're going to end by doing an affirmation together. And this is just part of one of Yoganandaji's affirmations. And we'll do it, as he recommends, more loudly at first, and then the second time quietly or whispering, and then the third time really, I'll have to whisper it, but really we're doing it mentally at that point. And then we'll close. I'll just chant Om a few times. And if you like to, you can take the vibrations of this affirmation into meditation. So repeat after me, first loudly. I am brave, I am strong.
I am brave, I am strong.
Perfume of success thought blows in me, blows in me.
Perfumes of success thought blows in me, blows in me.
I am cool, I am calm.
I am cool, I am calm.
I am sweet, I am kind.
I am sweet, I am kind.
I am love, I am sympathy.
I am love, I am sympathy.
I am charming and magnetic.
I am charming and magnetic.
I am pleased with all.
I am pleased with all.
I wipe the tears and fears of all.
I wipe the tears and fears of all.
I have no enemy.
I have no enemy.
Though some think they are so.
Though some think they are so.
I am the friend of all.
I am the friend of all.
I have no habits.
I have no habits.
In eating, dressing, behaving.
In eating, dressing, behaving.
I am free, I am free.
I am free, I am free.
I command thee, O attention,
I command thee, O attention,
to come and practice concentration
to come and practice concentration
on things I do, on works I do.
on things I do, on works I do.
I can do everything.
I can do everything.
When so I think, when so I think.
When so I think, when so I think.
And I'll just start reading this more quietly. We don't have time to repeat it again, but this last part is more inward. And really tune into the feeling and vibration of these words. In church or temple, in prayer mood, my vagrant thoughts against me stood, and held my mind from reaching thee, and held my mind from reaching thee. Teach me to own again, oh own again, my matter-souled mind and brain, that I may give them to thee in prayer and ecstasy, in meditation and reverie. I shall worship thee in meditation, in the mountain breast and seclusion. I shall feel thy energy flowing through my hands in activity. Lest I lose thee, I shall find thee in activity. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.